for specific areas. And the way it works is that asking too much. Here's a quick test. Can you guys hear my computer audio? I don't think you can. No, there's no, you guys can't hear computer audio, right? It's probably asking too much. I'm not going to go crazy trying to get everything to work here, but yeah, I'm just playing Spotify right now. So I'm just playing Spotify right now. I don't really want to play. No, like I said, I'm just playing a Spotify change list. But the reason that I'm asking about audio is because saw the Red Dead Redemption trailer came out this week, or the gameplay came out this week, and I thought it'd be cool to take a look at it. And I was kind of hoping that audio would work, so not just watch. You're not just listening to my air conditioner. I don't know if you guys have all seen this, but pretty cool. Can you guys hear this audio? Can you hear this? Whoops, that's my bad. There we go. Anyway, the lighting looks pretty amazing for this. No, can't hear the video. Yeah, sorry guys. But honestly, the lighting is what we're looking at. Lighting looks pretty cool. For a game like this, where everything is, as a matter of fact, I'm going to mute it on my end. But for a game like this, where everything is pretty much being rendered at runtime, right? Dude, look at this mud. We were looking at this the other day, and just the water in the mud, the little droplets look really good. The footprints in the snow. So the tough thing about games like these is that you don't have light maps. Everything is being dynamically lit, and all of the bounce light information is captured into the probes, what they call probes, which is they store the it's kind of like a when you put a character, what is it, light mass importance, not light mass importance, but the it's like spherical harmonics. Unreal does it when you place a light mass importance volume, but it basically lays out a grid of points that sample the average lighting in the area and then translate that back to actors or dynamic objects or characters. And that's what a game like this is relying on, because they don't have light maps and the time of day is constantly changing. So it's a procedural, they have a procedural model for their lighting solution. So generally on a game like this, you'll find that there's much higher contrast because they can't store the fidelity of bounce light information. However, the technology is getting so good that, if you look at an earlier Grand Theft Auto, you can see it more. But nowadays, man, it looks great. And with games like, they're not the only ones that are. I mean, Rockstar is definitely pushing the boundaries for this kind of rendering. But look at Horizon, look at even Fortnite, look at any of these games. Those are all what we call deferred renderers, meaning that it does the rendering at the end of the process. After it does the rendering at runtime is essentially what it means. And then you'll hear you'll sometimes hear the term forward rendering. Forward rendering means that it does the rendering. It does a large part of the rendering up front at compile time, and it doesn't burden the engine with rendering everything at runtime. It only renders the dynamic lights at runtime. In a game like this, everything is dynamic. There are no baked lights. So this is a deferred render where everything gets handled in frame. I hope I'm making sense. Anyway, but just really cool. I just thought it was cool to just kind of look at the different values. No, can't hear the video, so there is no bounce light in the game. Well, there is no light. There are no light maps in the game. So there is bounce light, but that light is stored in a similar way to, not really, but kind of, you can think of it more as the way we store reflections. It's storing that into a low-res grid of sample points that it then reapplies that back to the characters. but everything is dynamic. So it's not that it's not that there's no bounce light, it's that there's no light maps. So they have to figure out a different way to store that information. And to a certain extent, sometimes they don't store that information. Sometimes they don't store all of that information, is what I'm saying. I've actually never worked on a game that was fully deferred like this. So see how dark those barns got? See how dark it gets back here? This is what I'm talking about, is that, you know, there's all kinds of dynamic conditions that can happen in the game, right? Look at all the different environments. We just saw sunset, we saw midday snow, now we're looking at nighttime. So this, that's why you're not getting the amount of bounce light that you might see here. That's why, and because there's a time of day, this is not just a set, this is a time of day. That's why the artist can't necessarily float static lights in here and just fill things out, or even dynamic lights, right? Because the conditions can change. So things have to be lit in a more practical way. And that's why you get larger swaths of areas that are super dark, and that, you know, you can argue that, like, hey, this be nice if this had a little bit more precision. And I don't mean to nitpick, because I mean, this is beautiful. I'm showing it because it's gorgeous. So I don't mean to nitpick, but this is what I'm talking about, right? Where you can really see that this is mainly sun. This is all getting hit with sunlight. These are probably lights that are placed in effects, this is all probably dynamic. But you can see that the way that they broke this scene down, it's generally, there's nothing coming from the dome. There's very little coming from the dome. The sky is a lot brighter than the amount of energy that you're actually seeing in the shadows. So the majority of the heavy lifting that's being done for lighting this scene is coming from the sun or the moonlight. It was kind of funny. I was at lunch the other day. We were talking, and you know, we're talking to somebody at work about another lighter, and we were talking about how, like, well, you know, we need the sun, and someone said, well, it's not always the sun. I mean, sometimes you have the moon. To which I argued, it's still the sun, because the moonlight is the light from the sun bouncing off the moon and hitting the earth. So that was just nerd argument points there. But if you think about it, it's always the sun from that perspective. Let's see. Yeah, so I think, you know, I just thought it was worth showing. We were definitely looking at this. I mean, this looks beautiful, you know, and that's why the whole deferred forward, you know, no light maps thing, that's why daytimes look better in these games, because of that, because you have more influence from the light. Still, look at the shadows. Look at the shadows in all of the dark areas in this game, and you'll see that the shadows is where you don't have that fidelity that you might have when you have a light map. It's not that it's a bad looking game. It's a gorgeous looking game. I can't wait to play this game. I'm just pointing out some of the differences that you can identify when you start talking about a forward renderer or a deferred renderer. So that crocodile. That's awesome. This is so awesome, man. This game just looks amazing. Look at the volumetrics. Arguably a little bit heavy on the volumetrics sometimes, but, you know, damn, looks good. And their interiors, you know, so they will dress up some interiors, but I also think that some of the interiors might have more of a procedural solution where there's certain lights that are, you know, allowed in certain types of structures. I'm not sure if artists hand place lights in all of those buildings. I really don't know. Very nice. The water is great in this game. And something I always like about Rockstar games is their shooting system and their tracking system. The way that they kind of make their aim assist system, to me, just makes the game very enjoyable. I'm not the best shooter. I don't have the best aim, and so to me, like, it's super cool to. It just makes it fun. It just makes it really fun. Not on PC though. Oh, really? Not on PC? They don't help. Well, it's probably a setting. Or Red Dead 2 is not, what do you mean it's not on PC? You telling me Red Dead 2 is not coming out for PC? It has to come out for PC. It might come out delayed, there's probably something where they have a deal where it's like PlayStation or Xbox. They just listed PlayStation Smart 1 at the end. You know what? PC will come out like 3 months later. I don't know why they do that, if it's to incentivize the consoles. Sometimes studios work out deals. Like in the past, our studio has worked out deals where our game comes out on PlayStation first, and it'll be available on like Xbox and PC in like 3 months later or 2 months later. And that's just a marketing technique. That's just, I don't know. We don't figure that out. Marketing figures that out. But it has to come out on PC. It's usually delayed on PC. You're right. So yeah, sorry, dude. I actually don't play PC games. I only play on console. So like, for me, it's cool. And for me, I get frustrated when games come out on PC that I can't get on a console. But that's also for me because my I don't mind. Well, you know what? For me, first of all, 90% of my choice of what game I want to play are my friends playing, right? So, I mean, I still play a lot of Destiny, which is pretty dead. I don't play a lot of Destiny. I play Destiny once in a while. We used to play a lot. We used to play every night. They've really killed that universe, I think. Sorry to say. But so more of it is just a social aspect. The majority of my friends are on PlayStation, so I tend to play PlayStation. If I install video games on my workstation, then I'm going to tend to play video games and not work. So that's kind of the other thing is I already have enough stuff to do when I do get on my workstation. I'm either doing reviews or working on personal projects or maybe trying to record something as a supplement for a lesson. And I kind of learned this from a friend of mine who's really, he does a lot of, educational stuff too. And he just said, oh, really? It's on console only? Dang, guys. Well, I guess that means you got to get a console. I don't know, man. I could have sworn that Red Dead came out on PC. What about Grand Theft Auto? What about GTA 5? Was that console only? That's surprising that Red Dead is only PC. 5 is on PC. Yeah, that's kind of surprising. I don't know why they do that. Because essentially, if you are publishing a game for Xbox One, I mean, you're using DX11 or whatever they're on now. You basically, if you can port it to Xbox One, then you shouldn't have a problem bringing it over to PC. It's basically the same thing. So that is odd, and in my opinion, that is probably just probably a marketing thing or something. That blows. But it's usually not the developer. It depends on the nature of the developer, but it's usually the publisher that does stuff like that. It's not necessarily the developer. But at any rate, those decisions get made at a point that's over my pay grade. So, yeah. Anyway, getting back to business. Anybody want to talk about anything? Anybody have any specific problems with their scenes? Is there anything you guys want me to go over? Quick thing, Omar, the exposure bias move position from the root. Oh man, why do they do this? So just so people don't get confused, it's not in the same tab as in your videos. Thanks, man. I do appreciate that. That's the one thing about Unreal, man, is they just keep moving stuff. So now it is what? Let's see. Where is it now? Is it exposure compensation? Did they change the name? Yeah, it's a bummer. That's just okay. You know what? I'll have to kind of do like a little supplemental video. Actually, I'd love to get your guys' opinion on that as students. What would be the best way for me to keep up with the changes that Unreal makes and present that to you? Would it be just a document of little updates or screenshots? Obviously, like it's kind of hard for me to just start re-recording entire videos just because they moved something. And for example, if it's significant enough, like last week we were talking about reflections, I actually recorded, much like the little demo I did online, I did in the Q&A, I just recorded it. After our session, I just hit record and just did it over again. As a way to just say, okay, something like that, I can just give a link to the students and say, hey, here's an updated thing. Recordings you made like last week worked fine, I think. Yeah, cool. So there are some little bits that I like to do that way. But you know, that can be kind of time consuming as well. Like I did the video on reflections, and when I say time consuming, I mean for you guys. I did the video on reflections, and it's like just under. It's kind of like I went for like half an hour, so I have to kind of edit it down and make it a little more, you know, make it a little more concise. I think it's kind of, you know, I always record more and then have to edit, and I get a little crazy with the editing just because I feel like I sound. I feel like I have to edit out a lot of just the ums and ahs and some of the dead space. So yeah, short recordings work fine. Okay, cool. We'll do something like that. This is great. I do appreciate who is it, Bruno? I appreciate you posting this up. And this would be awesome to do. Is this a thing? This would be awesome. Bruno, post this in the forum, will you? Can you do that? Because this is great. Yeah, they just change. Unreal changes a lot. I have a friend who he's an animation director for a VR company, and they work in Unreal. They work exclusively in Unreal. And, you know, he does occasional like speaking engagements and kind of, he's going to be doing a class at CGMA actually. So I think not this term, maybe next term or the term after. I'm not quite sure when he starts. But anyway, the point is, he works in Unreal, and he gets asked every once in a while, like, you know, he said, he was telling me the story where he was kind of getting clowned, where someone was saying like, oh, what version are you in? And he told him the version, and it was kind of outdated, and not outdated. It was just, you know, like 6 months old. And the person was kind of like, God, you know, you're a professional. You're still in this old version. Yeah, we are in the old version. And when we are in production, especially after a certain point, we're not going to change anything. We're not going to change. We're not going to update to the new version of Maya. We're not going to update to the new version of, you know, Unreal or whatever the case may be, because you're also introducing variables. Well, what if the code changed? Well, what if now volumetrics don't work? Well, what if something that our system is dependent on does not translate over? So generally, as developers, we will not necessarily be on the latest version of software, especially if it's in the middle of a development cycle, especially if it's in the last year of development, because every time you change the environment, you are introducing variables that you may or may not account for. We modify and author our own engine. Our own engine is originally a Quake engine, but at this point it's ours. We've modified it so much that it's our engine. We have engineers in-house that will implement modifications to it. But even at a certain point, we employ a what we call content log. As a development cycle, as a project is going through development, you know, you have pre-production, you have production, you know, you have certain milestones. Towards the end, first what we do, and all games do this, is you institute a feature lock. So after a certain point, there will be no new features. That is to ensure a certain amount of stability. And because we have to get a game done, we're not going to keep adding features. At a certain point, we have to cut it off and just finish on and just work with what we got. So there's a tools lock, there's a feature lock where after a certain point there's no new features. After a certain point there's a content lock where there's no new content. We're not introducing any new content. We're only polishing what's already there. And at the very end, we will only fix bugs. We will, like, I have to have a bug, and the way that we track bugs is there's a whole software that does it where, you know, testers will play it, you get a ticket, hey, you're getting a funny, you know, reflections are funny over here, or shadows are acting oddly. They don't have to know testers don't have to know exactly what is wrong with it. If it just looks wrong, they can bug it, they send it to us, I get the bug, oh, this is a material issue, I send it to the materials team, oh, this is a lighting issue, I fix it. Oh, this is a lighting issue, but I don't know what it is, I might send it to tech art or to programming to help me figure out what's going on here. So that's kind of how we filter things down. You know, almost like coffee, right? You start real broad and you start to filter it. And at a certain point, like, all you're allowing through is exactly what you want. So it's probably a bad analogy, but I'm just putting that out there. So they're, you know, that is very much something that we do. And for the stability of the project, we're not necessarily going to be on the latest version of Maya. It depends on where we are in the project. It depends on whether or not it's not a big deal to incur those changes. And on top of that, whenever they do integrate changes, those, like especially code changes, they get scrutinized. So as a programmer, I'm not a programmer, but if I was a programmer, I can't just change a bunch of code and check it in. That has to go to a certain process, and it has to get validated that it's correct and it's not going to break, the game for the other 200 people that are working on it, or more. Some of these games are huge. When you think about how many people worked on like all of Rockstar Studios worked on their games, there's like, hundreds and hundreds of people working on that game. You got to be very careful what you do with the code, or, think of it this way. If you take a game down, like Grand Theft Auto or Red Dead, like in production, even for a day, let's say you check something in and you go on vacation and it takes a day to figure out why the game won't run and to get it running again. Think about how much money that is just based on artists and engineers sitting there not being able to do anything because the game won't run. So there's a lot of money in games, just like there's a lot of money in films. There's a lot of wasted money in games, just like there's a lot of wasted money. There's more wasted money in games than in films, I will say. I think that the game industry is a lot more wasteful of resources. In film, everything gets kind of budgeted down, and there's a timeline and a date and a expected cost to everything in film. I think that in games we tend to burn a little bit more money on things, but I also think that that's going to get more and more. It's going to be less and less the case as time goes on. It's just that film has been around longer, and they've made all these mistakes, and they've figured out ways around them. You guys still with me? Everybody still with me here? I know I'm just kind of rambling on. Haven't heard from anybody in a minute, so just making sure. Still here. All right, awesome guys. Okay, so I have been just chattering on for a bit. Let me see if I can find the chats, contacts. I just want to find the people. Like I had a menu here that showed me who's. There we go. See who's in here. Okay. Oh, did we lose some people? It's like we lost Nalima. Okay. All right, guys. So let's talk a little bit about what I saw this week in terms of the posts, or in terms of the galleries. And for the most part, like I said, I felt like everybody had some pretty good stuff. Let me see if I can I'm going to open my scene while I talk. There were some areas that I thought were a little dark. And I just want to make sure that people kind of have a feel for if you need to fill some areas out and just kind of, open a, that's going to take a second. If you need to fill areas out, I want to encourage, on week 4 assignment, you're working on week 4 as we talk, dude. That's impressive, man. Some impressive multitasking. How's week 4 going? Is that good? Anyway, I want you guys to feel like, hey, if a room is too dark, I have the option to fill it out a little bit. You can add some fill lighting, and that's fine. So I just want to make sure that we try to be realistic, but at the same time, if I need to make something work, I'm going to make it work. I'm not going to necessarily just throw in a towel and say, oh well, it's a little dark in there, but there's no windows, so that's what you get. I'm going to make it playable. And if I need to fill it out with a little bit of a spotlight or a little bit of, give it a little kick, I'm going to do that. And like I said, I think like a week or 2 ago, someone asked me if I cheated. I cheat all the time. I cheat as much as I can, and the only rule is just don't get caught cheating. Don't put a hey, Nalima's back. Cool. So I'm going to let that compile. The reason it's doing this is because I'm opening it up in 420, so it's got to make a copy of the scene and go through all this jive. So that'll freshen up in a second. I really don't have anything specific that I was going to do in here other than just maybe place a fill light and just kind of show you how I'd fill an area out. But the truth is, you guys, most of you guys are doing this. I just want to make sure that you guys have that it is in your toolkit. It is mentally in your toolkit to say, oh, this is dark. I don't really have window in this area, so I'm going to fill this out. And what you look for is just a little softness, a little, I always say you want to feel the light. You don't necessarily want to see the light. You don't want to be aware of it. Like, oh man, there's a light here. You just want to feel it. You want to feel that you actually want to not notice it. And it's in situations where I notice the darkness more You know, sometimes the darkness takes you out of it. Sometimes you're like, wow, everything looked great, and I turned the corner, and this is like really dark. It doesn't make sense. So that's all I'm talking about. Is just kind of being, you know, being flexible and knowing that you have resources, you have options. Get over here. All right. Oh, dude, look at this. Why is it not letting me select anything here? That's bizarre. Oh, maybe it's locked. Anyway, Geo Sun Temple. Is it because the temple's locked? Nope. That's my Geo. As you can tell, it's been a while since I've been in these scenes. There it is. There it is. All right. So all I was going to say is I'm going to copy this. And this is just a quickie little example light. I rarely create new lights, by the way. Once I've kind of done my initial pass and I've created a few lights, I find that most of the time I just duplicate. I just grab something that's close or convenient or nearby and or that has the same color, similar value. I just duplicate it and just keep going. I rarely actually go in and create a new light. So for something like this, let's see, are we using temperature here? I got a feeling we're using temperature. But for something like this, I would just soften it out. We're not going to use temperature. I'm just going to use color. Just give it a little bit of this blue. And this is what I'm saying last week. I tend to hit this color of blue. I tend to hit that very often, very repeatedly. It's not that I'm a master of color. It's that I've just done that so many times that I tend to hit those values pretty consistently. And you can see the exposure kind of adapting in here too. So if I take this out, let's say I wanted to fill, and I'm doing this already in here. You know, I think I covered this in the demo. But something like this, you know, something where I might just wash an area down with a little bit of light and I'll bring it down, even like that. You know, even that feels kind of strong if you look at it, but it's not super evident. You're not going to look at it and go, oh man, this guy just placed a huge light here and it doesn't make sense why. I don't get it. There's nothing here that represents that light source. You know, obviously you gotta be delicate with it, right? You gotta have some finesse with it, right? But it's really just eyeball. It's really just dialing something in like that and saying, cool. I don't really need to give the player a reason. It's just when the player walks through here, I'm breaking up the symmetry of this composition because one of the walls is a little bit brighter. I didn't go right in the middle. I'm not hitting both of these walls the same way with light. I'm giving it a little bit of interest and a little bit of asymmetrical value. And inversely, if I were to kind of look at my own work from before on this, I feel like maybe there's too much green light. If I can navigate in here, maybe there's too much green light over here. So, you know, maybe I need to dial this down, remove it. I'd have to recompile, I think. But you guys get what I mean. It's just a matter of, you know, if you see something that needs to be fixed and you don't necessarily have a lot of natural light coming through, your option, you always have the option to fill it out, you know, by hand. It's just a matter of working it. And also being conscious. I like to kind of put pockets of shadows in between my lights so that, number one, they don't mix like this one is mixing with this orange light. I'm already getting a lot of kind of this salmon color in here. This is only going to exacerbate it because there's more lights in here. So for example, if I wanted to change the color of this area a little bit more, this wall specifically, I would also look into reducing the influence of orange light that I have in here. You know what I mean? Just a little like, don't be afraid to, you know, to embellish. And I thought a lot of you guys have some really good scenes. And I think on a few of the reviews that I did, I specifically would mention, because it's not something that you look at, but I would look and tell somebody, and I'm not saying this about my work, actually. I think you guys had some of you guys had better gradients in these areas, but sometimes I'd see something up in the ceiling where it's like, dude, look at the gradient that you're getting. This is great. This is perfect. Think about getting that in other areas around here. So sometimes you see things that you like. Sometimes you're inspired by something that you did or by something that someone else did. But but I think it's valuable to recognize strengths and recognize things that it's as valuable to recognize things that work as it is to recognize things that don't work. See those volumetrics? I'm not really feeling those volumetrics. I think that's coming from the sun. But I could even, I don't know, I could block them off or something. I could figure something out. I'm just not crazy about the way that they, even though they are coming through those holes, the voxels are too big and it just looks blobby, looks weird. Once again, that's a great example of 99% of the player's attention is going to be down here. So am I going to go, how much time am I going to invest in fixing something that actually doesn't look that bad unless you're at a very specific angle looking in it, you know, you're right here. So it's something that I have to think about a little bit as well. And I know I kind of was, a lot of what I said in the reviews this week was reflection. My reflections aren't great in here. So I'm just illustrating that it is a, let's take a look at them. It is something that I find I'm always going back to. And especially when you're working in a team environment, they're updating geometry. Geometry gets moved and changed and updated and all the time and up-resed. So it is not an uncommon thing to have to do multiple reflection passes and to update said reflections. I guarantee you that my reflections are, oh yeah, look. So down here, my reflections are, they're somewhat okay, but on this wall, I'm reflecting exterior. I'm actually missing a reflection on there. So it's really helpful to be able to look at it in this mode. Let's see what happens back in here. That back wall here, it's okay. There's something funny going. You know what it is? This area is getting light that it shouldn't be getting. This is getting a wrong reflection. And parts of it are, right? You can see the exterior. You can see it's looking outdoors. So it's just a matter of chasing that down. It's a matter of just either adding a volume or pushing increasing a volume or adding a sphere, right? I'm gonna peel this off. So maybe I need to add another reflection point up in here and just rebuild it, you know? And I bet you that the radius of that reflection sphere is not big enough. And that's why it's still kind of failing. See when I moved it closer, see how it fixed itself? So reflections, man. And the truth is I should have used a cube in here. I should use a reflection volume, maybe two, maybe one on top and one below. But at minimum, these reflection spheres are too far away. So what was happening is it was touching the wall, but it was feathering out. At the point that the radius of this reflection sphere was hitting that wall, it was also feathering out to, at that point, nothing. And so it's just picking up the default probe, which is outside, just picking up whatever's outside. Always a healthy exercise to revisit your reflections. So you're having a similar problem. That looks like there's two different reflections going on. What's going on is the one in this room is also wrong. So I need to fix these. I probably just need to duplicate these. Okay, I'm sorry, I got behind. Omar, not sure if you covered this already, but can we use point lights for fill as well, or mostly spotlights? You can use, from a technical point of view, there's no reason why you can't use a point light. I tend to rely on spotlights because I can direct them more. Omni lights tend to bleed everywhere. They go everywhere. So they're a lot harder to control. And a lot of times when I'm adding or filling an area out, I don't necessarily want more light. I don't necessarily want more light everywhere. I want to work it in a certain way. So I think that it is a good exercise, and it is more helpful for you to know how to do it with, there's still something wrong here. I'm still getting a little bit of outside, but you can see how much better the reflections got just in making a couple of edits. And the truth is that when we go back, I'm not saying that you should just do sloppy reflections, but the truth is that when we go back to a lit mode, you know, at the end of the day, this is what needs to look good. This wall is too flat. See how much light that's getting? That's way too flat for me. But that works a lot better. And a big tell, and I'm going to get back to you in a second, Nalima. A big tell is when you look at reflective surfaces and they're reflecting something that's not appropriate to the room that you're in, right? See how that, let's just delete it, right? See how now this reflective surface kind of has this whitish blue tinge to it? It's picking up red light from the dynamic light, but it's actually getting a good amount of its reflections now from outside. And if you didn't have something to compare it to, you might look at that and just say, "Yeah, it doesn't look that bad." You can't tell, you know, but look how much more correct this one looks over here than this one, because it's getting this blue, it's getting reflections from outside. So that's why. Okay, sorry, Noema. I don't want to scare anybody away from point lights. There's nothing wrong with point lights. They're useful, but point lights tend to go everywhere. They tend to be kind of, at least, especially in the engine in which I work, they are point lights as a matter of optimization. It's made this way on purpose. But our point lights only cast a shadow in one direction. So when you place a point light, it's really like you're placing 6 spotlights, right? And you got left, right, forward, back, up, and down. Out of those 4 directions, or 6 directions, only one of those will cast a shadow. So when I have a point light in Call of Duty, that point light I have to place, if it's a dynamic light. If it's a static light, it doesn't matter. The issue that the light goes everywhere and it's hard to control is the same, but I don't worry about shadows. But what I'm saying is, this light is going to go everywhere. Where's my radius? Source radius? Did they change this too? It's attenuation radius. This light, let's make it a color that, actually, let's take it off of temperature first, and let's make it like purple, just so we can see it. And let's crank up the intensity. I don't care what it looks like. It's just an example. So this light's kind of going everywhere. And one of the things that I would mention to some of the reviews I saw, I think more so last week, was that sometimes people place a light here, and they would get this great like, you know, hey, I really like the way that the light hits these surfaces, and it looks, maybe it's a little dark, maybe I need to crank that up a little bit. I really like the way that this light is hitting this statue, but look what I did to my wall. I'm blasting my wall out because for the light to reach the statue in a way that I like, I'm having to crank it up to an intensity that it looks pretty bad on this wall over here. Not to mention, it's going through, I don't know if it's actually going to go through this wall. No, not right now, but that's the volumetric. So I think by default, Unreal does give you shadows on all the axes. And I actually had a colleague of mine at work told me this. She's like, she has a lot of experience with Unreal. She's like, oh yeah, by default it does that. But that doesn't mean that if you were actually working in Unreal, that would be, that might be turned off. That might be clamped, right? So I'm producing a lot more shadows in this setup than if I just had a spotlight. Inversely, I can control this better if I bring this in and dial it down. And let's say I just really like that value. Maybe my radius is a little bit too short. But let's say I like that, and then you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to grab a spotlight from over here. That's not what I want. That's what I want. All right. Just because I'm lazy and it's just easier for me to hide the geo, select the light, and then reselect it than it is for me to wrestle with why the light doesn't want to let me grab it, which is probably that translucency thing. But whatever, just for the sake of expediting. And let me know. I mean, if you guys have any questions, or if you're cool with this, or if you know, if you guys know, if I'm just teaching you stuff that, yeah, dude, we know, then that's cool. We can move on. So don't, you know, I don't want to overdo it. But my whole point is, it's a lot easier for me to get control over my scene this way, right? And maybe I do want a little bit more light on the ground. That's fine. But it's easier for me to get control over my scene this way than it is for me to use an Omni light. To me, Omni lights cause more problems, and most lighters that I've worked with, I think, would agree. It's not that we don't use them. They definitely have their uses, but they can be a little more expensive because of the nature of them to just bleed through things and then conflict with other lights. Maybe I have a light in the next room that when I use an Omni light and it bleeds through the wall, now that light is Xing out, and I need to resolve the amount of shadows that I have. or I need to resolve the amount of lights, literally the amount of lights. Like if I go into the, sorry guys, I want to see the light complexity, light components, lighting features. I'm in the wrong place, aren't I? Visualizers. Oh no, sorry. Optimization, view modes, light complexity. So this is literally the amount of lights, right? So if I'm working in VR, I might have a limit where I cannot have more than 2 dynamic lights on top of each other, because that is hurting the frame rate. So it might be an issue of that. Let's see if this light is calculated on the other side. No, a little bit. I'm getting a little bit of 3 lights touching back in here. Right now, I'm kind of okay. Actually, see this circle on the ground right here? That looks like it's coming from that Omni light. Oh no, the Omni light is here. So there is a certain amount of light that I think might be bleeding back in here. And a way that I can test it is to actually just duplicate this light and see if this back room, see if this back room gets any hotter. See, so there is contact in here. I just duplicated that light. I'll duplicate it again. See? Now, I have 3 lights in here, but what this is proving is that these lights, even though they're on this side of the wall, it's making it to back here, right? As far as from a calculation point of view, as far as from a perspective of how much does the game have to consider when it's calculating rendering, and that has a direct correlation to the frame rate. So my frame rate will drop. In Call of Duty, we never want to be lower than 60 frames a second. We work very hard to maintain that frame rate. And, you know, to my disapproval, in some cases, we maintain 60 frames a second by reducing the aesthetic quality of the game. We can't render things to look as beautiful as they actually could because we're just below frame rate, and it's got to play right, you know. And that's, once again, that is a concession that we have to make in games. Okay, guys. What else you got? You guys want to talk about anything else? Does that make sense? Is that useful? Am I just repeating stuff that you already know? Feel free to tell me. Makes sense. Thanks for explaining. Awesome. Yeah, we got about 10 minutes left, guys. I mean, I'll go longer than 10 minutes if you know, if we got something to talk about. But we got about 10 minutes on the clock left, so let me know, man. Is there anything you guys want to talk about? Anything you want to discuss? Any issues with week 4? Some of us are currently working on it. And I'm going to go ahead and just get out of here. I still got Unreal open, so I don't know what that was. Sorry. IES light length seems limited. What do you mean by the light length? And John, on that note, how many static lights have you put in a scene in the sense of one that's got an insane amount of them? I don't have like a hard and fast number for you, but I have had scenes where I have one scene that I'm working on right now, one level. It's a multiplayer level for the game, and there's a big warehouse, and so the warehouse has, you know, it's a good thing, but we're always pushing something that the engine can't do. So it's a big warehouse. Initially I lit it was just going to be on, and it was just going to stay on. So I lit it. Let's say they had like 24 of these big light fixtures that hung down from the ceiling. It's kind of a lot for me to put 24 dynamic lights in an area. So obviously I would try to take like swaths of them. Like, can I take like groupings of 4 lights and put one big spotlight, right? And kind of pare it down that way. Well, at least that would only be 6 lights. It wouldn't be 24. So I did something similar, but then what I ended up having was a bunch of lights on the ground. You'd see like a pool of light, like the disc of the light. And then you would see like a weird shadow, like not a shadow, but it would just be like a disc of light go into darkness, a disc of light. And it looked like polka dots. It was very spotted. So I went in and I put in a bunch of static lights to kind of fill those areas out. And it worked out really well. I don't remember what the count was. It got pretty heavy. An issue that we had is that now they want to turn the lights on and off as part of the gameplay. So if you're turning lights off, I can turn the dynamic lights off, but I'm either going to be baking the bounce light into the light maps, or I'm not going to have any bounce light at all. So first of all, that rules out the ability to use static lights because they're only captured in light maps. And second of all, the dynamic lights that I have are also not going to have any bounce light. So you end up with this super high contrast look because all you have is just light and then black. So a solution that we had, that we actually got, it took a couple months to get it, but a solution that we came up with was this form of baking multiple light map states for specific areas. And the way it works is that I can go in and I can select a group of lights and tell them that, and give them a second state. It's a parameter that I can add where I can give them a second state. And when it is baking, when the light maps are baking, it'll look at that and say, oh, okay, it'll bake it in state 0. And then it'll say, I'm going to bake it again in state 1. And it's smart enough to be able to switch between the two. There is a memory cost to that. It's not free. There's a performance cost to that, but that is a solution of how we got around being able to, let's say, turn lights on and off and have them look correct. And we're still working on it. It's a very new system. So my point is, I don't have a hard and fast number for how many. Yeah, it was a great workaround, and it's 100% on our graphics programmer and our tools team. I mean, without them, like, we couldn't do, if the engine, if you and I, John, if you and I said, we're going to make a game, you and I, and we're going to just work out of our houses and we're going to set up a GitHub or Perforce and we're just going to set up a server, we'd still be limited by whatever Unreal can do out of the box. Unless you got programming skills, I don't. So unless you got programming skills, we're yeah, right. So, being able to have that as a resource is huge, and I just, all the artists in the studio need to give credit where credit's due. We have an amazing graphics team. We have an amazing tools team. And without their support, we would just be limited to, the features that came from we'd still be using Quake. It would just be Quake. So, yeah, man, it is, it's the same in the cinematic industry. Yeah, you know what you're talking about. So, it's great to have that support, and we're constantly, and I think it's a good thing. Our designers are constantly designing things that our engine is not set up to do. And I've had this, I've been heard as the ghost of Infinity Ward, just roaming the halls saying, this is not what our engine is supposed to do. This is not what our engine is built to do. Our engine is built to do stuff sitting out in the day with the sun hitting it, and the normals look great, and it has a lot of direction to it. It's great at doing golden hour. It's great at doing sunsets. Why do we always have to do nighttime? Why do we always have to do some weird scenario that just completely goes against what our engine does? But the truth is, if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't innovate, and we'd just be using Quake. So that is a very good thing, even though that does sometimes translate into headaches for lighting artists or for, and then by extension, that turns into a headache for the tools team, but they always hook it up, man, I got to say. So, yeah. Static lights are free if you're baking light maps. If you're working on a game like we saw, like Red Dead Redemption, sorry, dude, you got dynamic lights and you don't have light maps. You don't have static lights. And I kind of pointed out, that's where I pointed out, not that I'm saying this game looks bad, but I'm pointing out this is where I'm looking to see how they handle these problems, because I know what problems they're going to have. I know that their problems are going to be in the indirect, in the bounce light, and in the shadows. And so I'm looking to see how they handle them. And I think in some cases they work well. In some cases, it'd be nice if they did have something there. They don't. But at the same time, what you're getting in the procedural dynamic skies and in all this beautiful landscape that's constantly changing is worth it. And as hardware gets better and faster, this will be less of an issue. I really do think that at some point we're going to be rendering movies in game engines, and we're going to be, playing movie quality games. It's just going to get to that point. As a matter of fact, I know certain people that have recently started working in, I'm spacing out now, pre-production, and what is the term that I'm looking for? Kind of like storyboarding, basically doing pre-production animations, blockouts. There's a term for it, and no, I don't know why I can't. It's evading me. But my point is that it's gotten to the point where they're actually starting to use game engines. They're using like Unreal or Unity to previs film sequences, right? They're not going to render them in Unreal or Unity, but they're already using game engines as tools for getting quick turnarounds on how something is going to look and being able to make a decision, storyboarding, that kind of stuff, you know. So that's super exciting. And yeah, for sure, in a couple of years, man, you know, you're going to be playing PlayStation 4 quality games on your phone or on your VR or AR system that everybody's going to have. And, you know, games are going to look like movies, and movies are going to be made using some of the interactive tools that we use in games, for sure. Animatics. Yes. Thank you, Jeff. Animatics. I don't know. I totally just bricked there. My brain just could not think of that term. Yes, they're doing animatics in game engines, which is pretty cool. Pretty damn cool. So yeah, it's getting there. I mean, you know, I've heard about that for years. I was also having a discussion where somebody was saying that, and I was saying, you know what? Yes, but actually, I was with Manny, the owner of CGMA, and one of the recruiters from Infinity Ward, and we were having lunch and we were talking about it, and I was saying, yes, but remember, they've been doing this for a while. Spielberg tried to do something in a game engine. I remember Digital Domain for a while was trying to do a reboot of Thundercats in a game engine as a movie. It got canceled. It never came out. So, and somebody else, I want to say, it's not DreamWorks. Somebody else. Anyway, point being is, there has been interest. I have a theory or I have a thought process, a belief that people that come from cinematic movie making have a hard time, like especially, you know, big name directors, they have a hard time with games because they're used to movie productions, and games, you cannot produce them like movies. It's just a different process. So I think that there's a little bit of a obstacle there, and I think in some ways it would be easier for a high-profile game director to branch out into making a movie than it would be for a movie director to branch into making a game. However, that is just my opinion, and that is something that I think the gap between those disciplines is something that is quickly shrinking. So, you know, and the truth is, it's going to be people that kind of come up in the two technologies that are going to bridge that gap. People like you guys. So, I think that's exciting. I think that's really cool. You know, and yeah, I can leave it at that, guys. If there's anything else you guys want to talk about, mention. More than happy to hang out for a little bit. Otherwise, I encourage everybody to go have a great Sunday. Have a good good end of your weekend, and have fun with week 4. I hope that is I hope that is a lot of fun. I think that you'll be able to employ a lot of the things from the critiques of this week into that level, because it is also kind of an interior that looks out into an exterior, but is an interior level. And then after that, for week 5, we're going to be doing we're going to have a little fun. We're just going to break it up and do more of a specific game mode that it's a like top-down runtime strategy game, and it's something that's more reminiscent of something that you would play like on a PC or something. It's kind of a little dungeon crawler level, but I think that is a nice. I had a lot of fun doing that one, and I think students have a lot of fun with that one too. It's a nice break from the kind of what we've been doing, and then we're halfway through the class. So it's amazing to me how fast this class goes, and it's really cool to see everybody develop and see everybody's work. So yeah. In case you guys, unless you guys have anything else that you want to talk about, and you're more than welcome to do so, let's wrap it up. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk next week. Yeah. Yeah, my pleasure, guys. And I don't know if you guys saw on the forum, I posted, just because someone was asking last week, very last thing. Someone was asking last week, and it might be on week 2, guys, how you can access the recording videos on hiding videos. And I thought I posted that. Did you guys see that? I posted that. or am I just crazy right now? But I asked CGMA and they said, oh yeah, this is, oh, downloading and recording. So just check this out in case you're interested in downloading or accessing the recorded Q&As. And I do apologize for this week. I did have a little bit of a train wreck trying to get everything started, but I think it's fine. It seems to be recording, and at the end of the day, it's up there. Anyway, if you guys want information or need more information on how to get to that, just check this out. And if you have any problems, let me know. Yeah. And with that, have a great weekend, guys. Thanks again. Thanks for participating. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for your enthusiasm and all your hard work during the week. I do appreciate it. The weekend of the 24th, sorry, I keep saying I'm out, and then there's one more thing. Next week. No, today's Sunday, Friday, Saturday, the week after next. This week, the 24th, 25th. I have some family stuff going on, so I will give you a heads up. I might have to push the Q&A. I might have to push it into next week or whatever. We'll figure something out. I will do my best to keep my commitment to this schedule. I might have to do it an hour earlier. I will let you know. And the reviews also, because I have family coming in, I usually try to get the reviews done. Some people turn in on Thursday, and that helps me because it lets me, if I wait to do everybody's review till Saturday, I'm like, that's all I do Saturday. My whole Saturday is doing reviews. So usually, 2 or 3 people will turn in on Thursday. I'll do those. Usually another 2 or 3 people will turn in Friday morning. Then I come home from work and I try to knock the rest out Friday night. And if I have to do a couple on Saturday, it's cool. Otherwise, with 23 students, it gets a little hectic depending on how many have turn in their work. So just a heads up, I will definitely email and post about that. That's just a one-time thing. It shouldn't be a big deal. All right, guys, I promise I'm done. Have a great weekend. Thank you. Pleasure seeing all of you guys. Pleasure. I really enjoy our time together on Sundays. And I look forward to seeing what you guys do for next week. All right, guys, thank you very much. Bruno, my pleasure, man. My pleasure. Yeah, thanks, guys.